All right,
All right, we're good to go.
we'll call to order. Can you do a roll call, please?
Dr. T,
Here.
Chair Lichtenberger.
John, here?
Well, there's two Johns now, so
Oh, that's right.
I gotta figure out how to do it. John Haverlick. Stan,
Here.
Devrin,
Here.
thank you.
Right. And has everybody had a chance to read over the minutes?
Yep. I think we can approve them as they stand.
There were no minutes. So the
We
last,
should
the last meeting, which was March, I was not here. Becky did not attend. It was not recorded.
Have my notes.
In order to do minutes, we'll need your notes.
Oh, what is it? Oh. Okay,
I want to say that, I think it was that meeting that, Kerr had, I thought it was Walker that was up here that took minutes last time.
Oh, well,
what did we,
Okay,
so we have no minutes to approve.
no, not for this meeting anyways.
Okay. And amendment and approval of the meeting agenda.
Move to approve.
All in favor?
or, I don't know, both my things on here? Yeah, okay, yes,
Okay.
no question.
All right. Okay, moving on, persons to be heard on the related to the agenda.
Hello. So we just hit persons to be heard related to the agenda. I don't know why you're here, so, okay. Okay, right on.
Form.
So there is no. All right, persons to be heard on unrelated to the agenda.
Nothing? You don't have any, get up and read up some poetry or something perhaps?
So we have none. All right, moving on, we have a staff report, EMS personnel roster and on-call system. And that would,
Hello, John. Nice to have you on the board. You've seen in the media, we've been having, problems in EMS response, especially over the summer. It's, drastically affected during the summer when people are leaving out of town. And a lot of my, main responders are unavailable. Currently, I went through my roster and did a count. I have 10 currently in town and available, and that includes all certifications, from driver up to EMT2. There's 2 drivers, 1 ETT, 3 EMT1s, and then the rest are EMT2s. They voted in August to go from a shift schedule where you would have a shift from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. day and night shift to going to an on-call system where we have done away with the code red. So code red meaning that it was, if there was no one signed up for that shift, that page would be toned out as code red, meaning the ambulance was not staffed. They've done away with that. Now they just tone it till someone shows up. For the most part, since we've implemented that, we've had a fairly decent response still. It still sometimes it still gets toned out 2 or 3 times before responders show up. But we're no longer holding the EMS responders to a fixed schedule in order to respond, because every call was code red. So when everything's code red, nothing is code red. It's just we're short-staffed. We have had a pretty good recruitment drive recently where we've had 7 new applicants for our EMS program. And so we hope to get them through and get trained in a course we're going to have starting after the 18th of October. I'm still working on the lessons plan for that, so I don't have the strict schedule ready to go, but I hope to have it ready by the end of the month. With going to that on-call system, what the volunteers are trying to do is they are trying to, if you, instead of just being signed up for a shift and that's your shift that you cover, If you're available, you respond. It's worked with some success. Some calls we have more help than, we could ever want. Other calls, it's still just the standard two. One of the nice things through some research that our chief did, and then talking with other departments, and then we confirmed later with our medical director, is we do not have to have an EMT one on board in order to run medevacs. We just need someone that has been medically trained in the back of the ambulance, so it can be an ETT, someone who knows where things are to help the medevac crews with the transport of the patient. So that takes a burden off a little bit, where as long as they have someone to drive for them, it can be anyone, plus that ETT or anyone that's been through one of our training programs. The volunteers also voted in that same meeting to pursue stipends. As an organization, I have a drafted letter. I meet with Jody next Friday to work on the proposal for that. And so that will be something that we'll be submitting and trying to get hashed out so I can include it in my budget for next year to begin in July. Should it be approved? So baby steps first. Beyond that, we haven't dropped any calls yet. It sounds like people are starting to come back, so it's not quite as dire as it was during the summer, but I want to reiterate, that can change at any moment. If for some reason, there's a new fishery that opens, or people just leave and can't afford to live here anymore or anything like that. So if of someone who's interested in responding with us, please send them our way. We still want them. More is always appreciated.
So what the changes are working out so far in your estimation, or?
There have not been any hiccups that I'm aware of, other than that initially someone might not respond until like that second or third page. But as I have listened when I've been in here in town, they have been, usually it's that first, second page. They have the minimum crew needed to respond, and then others show up after the fact. So
So the important thing is we have not had any adverse outcomes as a result of it.
Okay, and has it made everybody happier to be that way, or no?
yeah, we've gotten some more response out of some of the members that were just work some really odd hours that are typically, they would go to show up, and the ambulance would be gone, and they're like, well, okay, well, the ambulance is gone. I guess I don't need to respond. It's allowed for a little bit more flexibility. And so Wrangell and South Tongass and some of the other communities in Southeast also similarly do not run an EMS on-call schedule. So far it's working.
What do you think the timeline is for getting the new drivers or new EMTs trained up and being able to be out on their own?
If they can get through the upcoming EMT one class, some of them have already stated that they would not be able to take this individual class. So I have a couple of options for getting them trained. As I spoke, we are doing an in-person initial EMT one class going through. If they make it through that class with all their certifications and get that certification, after about like a month or two of responding with other responders, they're probably fine to turn them loose on their own. Because you're never really alone as long as you're, responding as part of a team. If they are going through, there are other courses that they can take online through a entity called APEC, APEC. I cannot recall what it stands for, but essentially they work in pre-hospital emergency care in the state. They have an online EMT1 program that people can take, where they take all the didactic portions of the class online completely through that agency. And then they would come to me and do their skills check off, and I would certify that, yes, they have performed skills to standard. In which case there's that another month and a half of, if they're regularly responding, to kind of get familiar with the process of running on their own before we can turn them loose completely. For those who don't want to do EMT1, there's also they are taking over that online ETT course. APEC is from CREMS. And so it's similar, it's just a lower certification. We still need to have a minimum of an EMT 1 or higher in order to maintain our ambulance certification, in order to essentially respond as an ambulance service. If you change that, it goes to more transport only. So we have to maintain that minimum of at least one EMT 1 or higher involved in the call, with the exception of medevacs. So I'd say as long as, after they complete a course, about a month, month and a half before, make sure they're comfortable responding by themselves, taking the lead on things, depending on responder comfort. So.
I guess my only last thing is, do you have any applicants you're looking
Oh.
at for the new EMS position?
Yes, sorry, I was gonna speak on that under discussion items, but yes, we have 2 applicants for the EMS coordinator position. One of them has already been interviewed and the next one will be interviewed next Tuesday. There's a 5-panel interview team that's made up of me, Becky Regula, Jody Tao, Captain Dan Bird, and the medical director, Mark DeCillo. And they've been interviewing the candidates. We continue to look at their credentials and see if they're a good fit for the program.
That's all I've got.
All right. All right, under the medical dispatch program, our report, are you gonna do that?
I can speak to it some. In short, nothing has been done. So initially, this started off as a conversation between myself, the lead dispatcher, and Dr. Tasillo to get to help train our dispatchers with emergency medical dispatch. One of the things that they were going to get is a set of like cards that they can start with, they call 911, start here. Okay, someone's reporting unknown medical. They flip open a book. They give them prompts for questions to ask that so they can, based on what you're seeing, can you tell me, are they breathing? Do they have a pulse? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they answer yes to one of those questions, flip open to the next thing. Okay, it's a heart attack, start CPR as an example. The cards have been bought. The lead dispatcher at that time was working on designing the cards with input to Tasillo. They had a personnel issue that I don't know all the details on, but my understanding is that the person who was working on it is no longer with the department. And then since then, it has not been touched. So we have bought the cards. We just need to finish designing them, and then the dispatchers can put them to use. But no one affiliated with the dispatch program is currently working on them, is what I have been told.
I have a little information. We will be advertising to fill the support services supervisor position soon. So hopefully we'll be able to get someone into that position and maybe things can start rolling again.
Harbor Master like do this?
That harbor master. But no real update at this time other than we have purchased it, and aside from someone related to dispatch working with that company to finish the process is all that's required, is my understanding.
Big buy-in on this was we could take the cards that they have, we can modify them to meet our own needs. And then they would go to the dispatchers with training. So, right now we have the stock somewhere, the stock answers, the, boilerplate stuff, but we've never actually seen it and we haven't had a chance to modify it.
One of the things that I had included for my budget this year as well, part of that agreement was that we jointly, the fire department and the police department, had budgeted for EMD training for those officers, and that is suspended until we can
Get
finish implementing the program. but I think it was $3,500 from each department to train all their dispatchers. So,
We are still short dispatchers as well in the PD, which is part of the problem. So if anybody knows of someone that would like to be a dispatcher, please send them our way. We are in desperate need.
Okay. Uh, It's a shame that that is languishing the way it is. I use checklists all the time and I don't see how you do complicated procedures without them.
Well, especially something you don't do every day,
Yeah,
so.
all right. Is there any unfinished business?
because we don't have any meeting minutes, I assume it's on the next meeting.
The minutes perhaps.
Okay. New business, safe watercraft operation training. Emergency Services Director Hankins has requested the board discuss and possibly make a recommendation to the assembly whether or not the borough should pursue an ordinance providing that all commercial boat rental agencies require proof of completion of a national or state-approved boater safety course in order to rent a powered boat in the borough. So.
Well, to do it properly, if we're going to follow Robert's rules, yes, there should be a motion and a second to get the discussion going.
Is there a motion to discuss?
Yes, so moved.
Okay. All right.
So that was part of what I kind of made as recommendations there. These are just my like ramblings. But there are numerous free courses people can take from basic operation to navigation rules, et cetera. And obviously this came about because of the skiff down there that got mowed down. And you know, any place else, if you go somewhere and rent a four-wheeler, you have to have, like in many states, you have to have basically taken a safety course of, you know, you don't run over people's fences, you don't stay outside the berms. I mean, there's standard rules of the road. This is separate from actually operating an outboard motor and navigating and all that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, we just did a boat rental in Oregon to go out and like jig for crabs. And, you know, right now the renter is just like, you're gonna do this, check, 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 sign your name. Have a nice day. I'll start the motor for you. Don't turn it off. And that was the extent of it. I think if you tried to rent a car that way, it wouldn't work out so well. So yeah, I think it's either a strong suggestion or an ordinance that people have some documentation that they've taken even the most rudimentary boating safety courses, which are free, online, or more, or, you know, somehow prove that you're familiar with watercraft. I mean, military, you know, MWRs will not let you rent boats unless you've taken one of these courses. So there is a kind of a standard, you know, at least the federal level where you have to prove that you've done something to try to familiarize yourself with, you know, watercraft travel or operation.
Can I
Go.
comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Having been in government for over 30 years, I would not like to see another regulation. What I would like to see is a recommendation or perhaps a packet of information. Each one of these operators, I've been told, requires a business license and they have to be renewed every year. And my suggestion would be to provide each of the operators of these lodges or whatever to receive some sort of an informational packet. Perhaps the Coast Guard Auxiliary could help with this and come up with stuff. Maybe you have some stuff, Aaron. What I would like to see is us encourage them, but not create another ordinance that is going to be just stacking a new ordinance on top of these people that are trying to make a business and still provide the safety for those who are operating. We all know, most of us should know, the waters around here are quite different than operating on some lake. So for my 2 cents, I'd like to not see a regulation, but I wouldn't have no problem giving a recommendation. And if we had literature that could be attached to their business license each time they pick up a business license, that either encourages or gives them information on how to educate their renters, I'm all for that. I don't want to see anybody get, die around here or anything like that, but I think there's other ways to do things besides just regulatory things.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that because I talked with a couple people that were, real experts. I'm not gonna mention any names, but and there's no way to enforce this if we make it, if we try to give them a fine or something for not having their people that rent a boat take this course, the only way we can enforce it is to have a police officer come and give them a fine if there's a problem. And we don't have that kind of numbers of people to do that. So I would agree with you. I think that it should be set up as a recommendation and given to all the operators and renters of boats in town and the lodges and that, asking them to comply, but I think that's as far as we can go.
Well, I think we fall back on this, we can't enforce thing is a cop out at every turn. I mean, we can't even enforce speed limits. So, but I mean, this is a safety issue, and secondary to that, it's a liability issue. If we say that, people have to take a 30-minute or 45-minute online course before they rent a boat, they would know that ahead of time before they got here, and it's free, so it doesn't cost them anything. And whether it's enforced or not, I mean, I think the borough should take a stand on the side of safety, and it's not an onerous requirement. And, like I said, secondarily, there's liability that's gonna come with this of, us by omission, not endorsing something, so.
I think the liability is primarily with the boat renter and the boat operator. I don't know that the borough, I mean, it's a business license, but I agree that it would be beneficial if there was something that we could strongly encourage, but I'm, again, the enforceability of it is aside. I just think that we can do this without regulations. I worked in a community down south that I was headed up a neighborhood deal, and what we did to try to avoid having to write tickets and take people to court was provided education, and we did it very actively. So I think,
If I may, sorry, I've been waiting for my moment to interject here. So the incident that happened in the Narrows is nothing new. What is new about it is that there was a fatality. But even that has happened before. So you can go back and look in pilot articles, and see a history of boater stranded, boater in accident, boater went missing. One particular one sticks out in my mind. I think it was 2021 or 22. Someone had rented a lodge boat and went missing overnight, and the lodge didn't even have any record that they were missing. They're not paying attention. The lodges know about this. I have spoken with some of the lodges and their employees. One of them recounted a story to me in which the renter, after there's the throttle, there's the steering wheel, there's the outboard, there's the chart plotter, there you go. The boater untied, put it into gear by punching the throttle, put the boat on top of the lodge dock, putting the boat up on the dock And the answer to that was to take them out of that boat and then put them in another boat and dealt with that one later. So they know it's a problem. The state of Alaska is one of 5 states that have no regulations requiring boater safety. Anyone who gets their hands on a boat can take it out and go do whatever they want with it. The problem with that is that we don't have, nice lake-like waters where it's easy to boat, meaning the waters are traditionally calm. We're surrounded by strong currents and lots of hidden obstructions. And if you don't know how to read a chart plotter, if you don't know how to read a weather report, if you don't know the basic navigational rules of the road for boating, you can get yourself into trouble very quickly. The Office of Boating Safety in Alaska has been pushing for this for years, and the state has no inclination to do anything about it. So if anything's going to happen, it's going to be up to local boroughs. The reason I propose this for commercial boat operators versus like a carte blanche, everyone needs to have it, is generally if you grew up here and you have your own vessel, or you move here and get your own vessel, you're acquainted with someone else who takes you out and shows you all that stuff. The resources are here in town. This is for the out-of-state people who come in and think, oh yeah, it's just like the lake back home, and go out and get into trouble. Unfortunately, providing the documentation of the business license, to my knowledge, business license aren't granted by the borough, they're granted by the state. And therefore, we have no opportunity to, other than just cold mailing them information, which I don't foresee them spending a lot of time on anyway. The lodges in there are to make money, not to instruct their operators. I see 2 means of enforcement, or 2 ways of enforcement. One is post-incident. So if there is an incident involving a lodge boat and we, during that investigation, post-accident, finding out that this person did not have it, my initial intention was for the lodges themselves as the responsible party in it, receiving a fine for, hey, you didn't give this person everything they needed to succeed on the water. At least just a standard, across the board for if you go, whether you go to this lodge or this lodge or this lodge, you have a baseline knowledge of how to operate a boat, just in general. Some lodges or some boat operators, like I think there's one in town that operates out of the harbors here that does a pretty good job. I haven't heard of any incident with that person's business. Trying not to name any names, but the lodges in particular seem to be the ones that are always getting into trouble. The problem is it's hard to track because some of it goes unreported. Good Samaritan comes by, grabs tow line, picks them up, however, and we never hear about it. So unfortunately, I can't provide any statistical data on it other than we know it's happening. But that would be one way that we can enforce this, is post-incident. The other option is that if we do a water rescue, we start charging for it. And if, regardless of circumstance, and if they furnish proof of a boater safety cards, we waive the fee. So those are the 2 options I see before us, if that is what you guys want to recommend. But I think something should be done. And I currently, under just the fire department's sphere of influence, do not have any influence out past service area 1. So I can't control anything the lodges are doing unless it comes down from the assembly.
We're the ones that rescue them.
From time to time.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's us, sometimes it's Coast Guard, sometimes it's another Good Samaritan.
Yeah, it's mostly passersby probably
Yeah.
that we don't ever hear about.
But
It's like the people. that are
sometimes
buying
we get a
dry.
call for a overdue person. We participate in a search and then end up coming across that person. Sometimes it's the troopers, sometimes the police go out by themselves. I mean, it's kind of a mismatch, but I know that of the agencies that are involved, the fire department, the police department and sometimes the harbor department as well.
So the reason I asked the question is if we're not the ones doing the rescuing, how can we charge them for the service? If we're the ones that are doing the rescuing, charge away. I mean, they do that in a lot of places where I'm from down south where they have to do helicopter extractions and so forth, and you get charged for it if you've done a stupid thing or violated some trail or something like that. I get that part, and I would have no problem with charging them for our services.
But if you haven't if you haven't identified that they've been trained, you can't say they violated something they don't know about.
I agree with that to the extent that if we provided them the information, then they have. And if they choose not to educate their people, then
And this
write
is,
the lodge a ticket.
and this is where I'm more pointing towards the lodges than the individual
Yeah.
renters. Because anyway, regardless of who responds, and I think you can point to the lodges as being partly culpable for allowing them to get in that situation if they haven't vetted the knowledge of the operator of that vessel, or at least given them any, any standard of knowledge. Hey, this is what it takes to operate in here, and here's some local knowledge related to local obstructions and things that you should watch out for. If all they're doing is just putting them in a boat, handing them a key and saying, good luck. I mean, I don't have, I'll come right out and say it. I don't have too much sympathy for the lodges.
Well, just the harbor minister.
Been around here a little bit. I would, I think applaud all you're talking about and what you're doing. And for me, it's all about, for the majority, hitting them in the pocketbook. I mean, I get it a lot where I get calls of, hey, I'm stranded. And my first question is, who do you want me to call? And then they're like, well, I don't have anybody. Okay, well, I'd like your credit card because I'm going to charge you $500 before I ever untie. Because, if I have to sit here and I got to call people in, it's going to be overtime and it's going to be, because I can't abandon the harbor to go out and rescue. Oh, okay, well then, hey, would you call Dr. Tasillo because I know he'll come out and, oh, okay, sure. So that's how a lot of this. But I was, just been around quite a bit now, noticing that primarily search and rescue is coming out of Wrangell. And they are a lot of times the ones that hit the ground running. They're pretty zealous about it. They have their team leader now has an airplane. They actually were on the scene in the situation we had in the Narrows, hours before anybody else. I'm wondering if we could propose Petersburg, your group could propose to Wrangell kind of an organized effort towards this. Because most of the lodges, by and large, are south of town. We have the Narrows, the lodges in the Narrows, but then you get down to Point Baker and there's a whole big group that's outside of our borough that is a real regular, search and rescue and all these kind of things are very regularly, I think, attended down there. We have Hobart above us. But I think if we were to maybe band together, us and Wrangell, and have this have an organized effort, maybe it would make a little bit more difference. I'm proud of you guys
But
talking about it.
Are you saying
but-
an effort in regards to response?
No,
or
our
in-
effort is putting the onus back on the lodge to be responsible for the entire operation.
I will be there all of next week. I can pursue that with them.
I will, maybe you guys can work together and really make an impact rather than just us sitting up here kind of on the north end of the situation saying, and if we could
I can
have a
pursue that
joint,
next week.
because they really do have a big imprint.
They
of
are
this.
zealous.
They are very.
The, And I will say, part of the reason is they actually still share a building with their police. And so, I mean, they're actively listening to 16, whereas we're not. Dispatch is, and we rely on dispatch to let us know that there even is an emergency. But I do know that they are interested in it as well, because I have talked with some of their personnel over there about it. And then the Office of Boating Safety and the newly minted Coast Guard Auxiliary are also interested in this based on discussions I've had with them. So they're interested in helping with the providing the training and the service, but they're also interested in making it a mandate enforcing, hey, this is minimum you should have to go out on the water. Where that stops and ends varies. Some of them want everyone to have it. Some of them are just fine with commercial operators. I'm fine with commercial operators right now because most locals have general knowledge. So anyway,
Are there any other municipalities or anybody else in the state that are contending with these issues that have come up with similar proposals or?
some local businesses in the interior do require this just on their own in order to rent. I think they get a break on their insurance for making everyone go through it. But that's up to the local businesses, not necessarily anyone in the state has pursued this, to my knowledge. I do know the bases, as Tisila was saying, the military bases do require it, but that's a federal thing. Yeah.
It's the
So-
same way with motorcycles and other stuff.
Oh, but even when I go in there, it's still, if I
yeah.
rent something from MWR, it's like I gotta pull out my little US boating certificate from 2009.
Yeah.
And I just, yeah, just because we've been doing this, I went back and just kind of updated it because it was like, that was a number of addresses ago.
The military has a hammer over their people and they'd use it for those things. I know that we taught motorcycle safety to the soldiers because they couldn't ride on base if they hadn't, and if they got caught riding off base, they could be in a lot of serious trouble. So the military is kind of a unique animal in that sense, in my thinking, but you said you're going to wrangle this.
Yeah, I'll be working with EMS and fire when I'm there, so.
I kind of like that idea of maybe trying to work as a dual community on this issue. I'm still not sold on a regulation per se, but I think that as an operator of a business, I incur some liability if I don't do things that are recommended by the borough or otherwise. But in fact, I incur a whole lot of liability that way. And if we hand them, yeah, I think that if we hand these businesses a packet or a suggestion, a strongly worded suggestion, that liability comes back on them if they don't execute. And I think that's a bigger hammer than us charging them $50 or $100 for a boating infraction. Because the insurance companies will go after them for wrongful death or injury and that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, this issue's already been settled if you want to rent a car. I mean, I don't know that it's that different.
well, that's because we have driver's license that regulate cars. We don't have boater's license that,
Well, a lot of places do. That's the
yeah.
point is you have a minimum training, thing. So
I also talked to Representative Hemschutt. She was very interested in seeing this go forward at least in Southeast, because she says it's a problem in Sitka and a
Oh, I
lot of the other
imagine.
places she visits. And it'd be great if we get the Coast Guard and the troopers and Wrangell and the other areas to just go with a combined resolution. No, not an ordinance, but a resolution saying this is what we expect and the owners are liable.
and even a letter in that regard too that I can go take to other municipalities if you guys wanted to propose that. I mean, that's something I can continue to work on if there's an interest in it. So,
Take what I can get. If we, a strong recommendation is a good start, but again, I think we don't need to be on somebody else's coattails if we think it's the right thing to do.
More discussion on this issue? I don't think we've got to a point where we can give a
It's a
recommendation.
can of worms.
It is.
I served in the Coast Guard on the Washington coast 2 years. And we had to deal with resorts and call them apple knockers, gomers or whatever from inland. And they come out and they do not have a clue. And a lot of them don't want you telling them what they're gonna do to get that boat so they can go fishing. And I've spent a lot of nights out looking for them in the water too. And we've had bodies laid out in our garage west of Forks, down below Port Angeles, and it's a real can of worms, and I don't know where you'd want to start. You'd have to start out probably getting, and I don't know who would support it or who would institute it, but start out with some kind of a regulation that had teeth in it to where if you can't show you're competent, then you don't go. But then the lodges or whoever's renting the boats, they ain't gonna like it, cause a lot of the people they wanna rent to, they're gonna come here without any documentation. Down in the Columbia River, when I was in the and this gets into sea stories, but it's true. The summers on the Columbia River, they used to lose somebody every weekend from an accident because of the bar and everything. And you're gonna have to start with a regular, and I'm the last person that wants more government involved telling me what other people can do, but you're gonna have to have some kind of a regulation or something that's got teeth in it to where if they can't show they're competent, then they just don't go.
I'm actually from Astoria, so I'm from Astoria, so I know what you're talking about.
Well,
But
I've crossed the bar down there
Yeah.
when the waves were taller than my dad's trolling poles. That was enough for me.
At this time, would, I guess just to help move it along, would the board change their motion to write a letter of recommendation pursuing this at a state level?
So moved.
Or just curious, seeing if
I
just,
mean, I will take what I can get on this. I think, again, independent of the ability to enforce something, I think it's the right thing to do to say you should have training before you get in a watercraft and go off on your own in Southeast Alaska. It's telling that there's only 5 states that don't require this, and it's gonna be, and again, I don't like overzealous regulations, but this may or may not save lives, so. I mean, again, and it's not an onerous thing. Like I said, most of these courses are 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go through and, read it, take the test.
don't know how long the states is, but the one that I'd included in the letter, that Boat US one, it's an 8-hour course. So I mean, if you showed up and it was, oh, I don't have my license, if you got internet out the lodge, or come into town and spend a day at the library, it takes, about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how fast you get through the material.
I think that one's, I would love for it to be that way, but I think that one's a lot, harder to kind of swallow for people, but I'll take what I can get.
I'd second the idea of the letter spelling these things out.
And this letter will be to who and written by who?
Well, I can generate a recommendation from the Public Safety Advisory Board to, I don't know, I mean, I guess we would maybe send it to the borough and copy it to the state, or copy to the state that, our borough is seriously looking at this as a public safety issue. And, if they wish to kind of, visit this on their own time, that would be great.
My recommendation would be to send it to the Office of Boating Safety. So there's your contact there, because they're the ones, that's what that office does.
Mhm.
And then CC in that letter, tag him shoot in it, tag, our representatives in it, as well as the local municipalities in Southeast. Be like, hey, this is something that we're interested in. If you're interested in it, you should write this too. And maybe through him shoot or the Office of, or Stedman or the Office of Boating Safety, it might actually snowball. Yeah, so there's that as well. Of course, this comes from the advisory board, not the assembly, so I don't know what the protocol is there.
It's fine to recommend something. You're not making decisions for the borough, so a letter of recommendation to the Office of Boating Safety makes sense to me. It could come from the Public Safety Advisory Board. I would, though, recommend that we draft the recommendation and then bring it back before you for your approval before it goes out.
Oh, yeah.
This is gonna make me real popular with people down the Narrows probably, but my wife and I we're not gonna do it anymore for other reasons, but we ran a vacation rental. And my wife has had to go to the airport and pick people up and a lot of people that and she's had to do a lot of traveling back and forth, and she's seen a lot of people coming here on planes. Generally, I bet you at least half the time when these sports are getting off the plane, then they gather up their gear and they get into their method of conveyance that's gonna take them to the lodge. Do you know where the first place they stop is?
Exactly.
They
the liquor
stop right
store.
downtown at the liquor store. And I'm saying if they got time enough to buy enough booze to last them for a week, and I like booze too, but, in measured amounts. But if the lodge has got time enough to stop down at the harbor or wherever, that they can get their liquid, whatever they want, they've got time enough. And it could be made reasonably simple, and I would leave it to the lodges to come up with something that, okay, you're gonna rent this from us, and here, you read this, and you got, half a dozen rules on safe operation, most of it having to do with using your head. But the lodge probably, I would say, should be required to have a recommendation that the clients would read and sign off on, that they
Like a waiver?
Well,
Like
that's
a
what they do
waiver?
now, yeah.
that they are familiar with safe rules of operation, and at the very least, with the changeable weather here can come at us from any direction and who knows what, that they should be mindful of the weather that we have here. All weather is local. Have you ever heard that one? Yeah. I've spent a lot of time at night for a couple of years looking for people that went out and got themselves lost, and some of them wound up dead. And it would seem to me the best way to, and you can put some rules and regulations in front of them. That don't mean they're gonna adhere to them, but at least you've tried. After that, I can't guarantee what would happen, but that would be a start. And it ain't, the lodges will probably put up a squawk, but that would be the be the first step toward people becoming aware of safe boat operation that they might not have had anything to do with. Haven't learned, you know? That's how I feel and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, so
Call for the question?
where,
How
yeah,
about you?
where are
What do you
we
think?
at? I'm kind of lost here. A letter to who?
So we
Be the
have,
quickest way to make sure that somebody has an idea what they're dealing with is just have it right there and then they gotta sign off on it.
so the motion on the floor right now is to draft a letter of recommendation to the Office of Boating Safety with the state of Alaska to initiate some kind of boater safety education or regulation
Standard.
standard, yes. And bring that back before the board for approval before it gets sent to anybody.
Okay, do we want that letter to be at large or commercial operations?
Question?
I mean, does that mean I go out and buy a boat and then I've got to do this? Or
No,
is it if I'm operating a lodge and I'm going to send you out to operate my boat? I mean, that makes more sense.
My original motion would have been for people renting a watercraft.
Okay. I just want.
I mean, and again, it doesn't matter whether it's a lodge or whether it's somebody here, but it would be it's like a rental car. If you're renting a vehicle, you should be held to a competency standard.
Okay, should I call for the roll for votes? Devon, Stan, John Lichtenberger,
Aye.
John Havrick,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. So the motion carries. All right. The next item is a local request to close Severson subdivision to vehicle traffic or for trick or treaters on Halloween. Police Chief Kerr received a request from a local resident to close Severson subdivision to vehicular traffic during trick or treating this year. The board is requested to weigh in on this idea. There'd been some concern is how do we identify, the chief expressed this, how do we identify who's,
I
Who
know,
can-
I'm familiar with it. I can speak on
Okay.
his behalf.
please do.
Before we do, the motion to discuss business? Okay, thank you. So we received a request from someone who wants to block off access into Severson's, most likely on Surf, Tango, I think it's Tango, and Westerly Street, whatever W Street is.
Streets would be Rambler.
Oh, no, not inside Severson's, access into Severson's. And the reason that they were requesting this is that they believe that vehicles that are moving in and out of Severson's are a hazard to small children. And they thought this might be a good idea to, one, keep children safe, and then the other to keep to keep congestion down during Severson's, and recommending that folks use the South Harbor boat parking lot to park in instead, because Severson seems to be the hot spot for trick or treating. After reviewing this request, the recommendation from both the fire department and the police department was no, based on we have not had any prior vehicular accidents in recent memory. I don't know if in longstanding history of anyone getting hurt. Usually the streets are so clogged up anyway with people walking about that you can't drive fast anyway. But then also you're restricting access in and out of people's homes. That there's an overtime requirement because, okay, who's going to actually stand by and enforce this? Most likely it would be a uniformed officer at 3 streets going in and out. You're going to have 3 officers standing by, and now you're paying overtime, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't see the need and thought it was not the best use of resources. generally the police and the fire department are up there handing out candy anyway on the upper streets. And we usually got the roads blocked, you know, at some portion anyway, because it's hard to get around a big fire truck in the middle of the road. So
My understanding that they hand out glow sticks or something anyway.
glow sticks so the kids can be seen, you know, especially if they're wearing dark clothing. Both the police and fire departments do that. And with those glow sticks provided, just a plug for the from the police department and from the fire department association, as well as candy from the volunteers as well.
I would make a counter proposal that we supply some reflective vests and possibly the cones on the end of some flashlights and have, you know, people volunteer to be posted at the intersections of roads and just, you know, stand out there where they can be seen. You know, that in and of itself make people slow down if there's somebody in a crosswalk. And that would be a community activity rather than, you know, a municipal activity.
Problem is that someone would have to take that on.
Yeah,
and
well,
that-
somebody actually is asking it to be done, so.
So if there was a neighborhood watch, or if it was the chamber that was interested in doing it, I mean, that's a possibility, but I don't think just a group of individuals should show up with road lights and try and direct traffic. I think that could lead to problems. It should be through some organization, though the fire department at their meeting, when I brought this up, and in talking with the police department, both have declined. We don't think it's the best use of our resources, but maybe if there was a neighborhood watch that was interested, or a group that was representing Severson's was interested to do that, maybe for next year, or if they can get it organized in time. It's
Right,
up
but I
to
think
them.
we could volunteer to give them some gear to use, which, like I said, reflective vests that they may not have, or a flashlight with cone on it or whatever, and then, you know,
This is to direct traffic, but not completely shut down
yeah, I think it's just make yourself visible out there and people are gonna slow down. I mean, it's not like you're gonna, you know,
So is this a proposal to draft a letter to the proposer of this, the person who submitted this, and send it back to him from the
did we get
PSAT?
did we get a formal letter of request? A
The
letter?
Chief Kerr did.
Oh, okay.
So, and then it was brought to my attention as well, and so I made sure it got on for you guys to talk about per
I
the
guess
manager's request.
he should chime in first about any potential liability as us putting people out in the street with our gear. But again, it's kind of like, that sounds like, like you said, a community watch kind of thing where we could help equip them to meet their concerns. But yeah, shutting down, I mean, you're walking with like a 3-year-old, you're not gonna walk all the way from the South Harbor up into Severson's to go trick or treat. And Severson's is the place where you know, everybody wants to go because it's like house after house after house with candy, so.
The reason I'm laughing is when I was a police officer in Juneau, we had a guy that would show up at everything with his cone and his vest. He'd wave people around and he got us in more trouble than he saved. So I would be a little bit cautious about how we encourage them, that I don't have any problem with. And it was my understanding that you guys are up there with lights going as well.
Usually we turn on some of them, and we're not trying to blind everyone, but we got lights going. The streets are well lit. At least the main artery, Odin, going through there is usually where we park, and we're in between two of the main exits. So if there's a fire somewhere else, we can turn out of there real fast. The ambulance is usually down towards W Street, and it has its scene lights on. So it's lighting up that corner, the intersection of Vesta and Unimac, somewhere in that area. And the police are generally kind of slow crawling through that area anyway, and I mean, we're there in case something does happen, but I mean, we're not necessarily there to enforce traffic, so.
I think this is another thing too, that we could put something in the paper and then letters out saying, you know, please do not use your motor vehicle from such and such a time, you know, just as a caution. And be careful watching for children during, this time, and especially when the fire department and the police department is out. Just sort of asking people to be careful.
And that would be fine, just advising people to watch out for kids. I mean, that's easy enough. So, but it's up to whatever you guys are recommending. So I'm not a voting member. Go ahead.
I'd like to move, I guess, to, go along with your guys' recommendation, the fire department and police department's recommendation to not block off the streets to traffic, and then, offer alternatives like perhaps, neighborhood get together and then, which I think they already do already, but to draft a letter to put in the newspaper for just watch out for kids, which I think is usually in there every year anyways.
Second. Aye.
I'm good. Go ahead.
She's busily writing over there.
They voted in there. They're
Yep,
all good.
I'm good.
So,
Okay, thank you.
I think next on your list was C.
It is. Borough Code, Chapter 1308, building and numbering is attached on the packet. Currently, the code mandates that any principal building on an occupied lots be visibly numbered in accordance with the system established on the plat on file in the borough offices. Should the board make a recommendation to assembly to amend the code to include metal address markers at driveways, along roadsides, and or enforce the code to help emergency responders easily find their intended destination.
And that kind of mirrors what I made in recommendation on this side is, because right now, as it reads, before the revision comes before the departments, is that this signage is supposed to be on the building. Whereas a majority of the most visible signage right now is on a monument stake.
Sorry, just for procedure here is motion?
What?
Motion to discuss?
Motion to discuss this item?
Sorry, just
Yeah,
trying to.
is there a motion?
Did you motion?
I
and
asked
you-
You can't make a motion.
Oh.
he's
I
the
can't.
chairman.
Yeah.
Second,
Okay,
to discuss, yes.
to discuss. All right,
But anyway, this is an ongoing thing. I sit here and listen to, like, where are they again? They said they're out on the front porch and like, oh, there they are, we see them. So there's already regulation that said all buildings are supposed to be identified numerically. But the present regulation says it's supposed to be on the building. And when we went to the voluntary monument stakes, I don't know, what, 15 years ago, the blue ones, it was never revised to say that was an acceptable way to identify a building. And then there was never any enforcement of those people who didn't put a monument stake out there for, well, I think it was $20 at the time when we first did it. Because then it was like, it was just gonna go on your tax bill and we're gonna come do it, which nobody could obstruct because it was in the right of way. It wasn't actually on their property, so anyway, I think they are revising it now downstairs to include the monument stake, the blue sign thing. And then it says that Public Works is the one that's supposed to enforce it. As the present regulation is. So I just think we need to enforce it. Because again, we spend a lot of time looking for buildings and, a lot of times buildings are identified by how old you are and who owned it, when you were growing up. So.
Well, and to my knowledge, I don't believe there's anyone in Public Works that would be able to inspect it. I mean, you would have to designate, okay, who in Public Works is doing that,
Well,
but
I'm just saying what
it's
the regulation
probably
is right now, yeah.
more appropriate for it to be someone like the building official or the fire marshal or something like that. One thing I will say on these monuments is that they are helpful for us, especially out the road. One of the problems we do encounter is that if multiple houses share one driveway, it's, and one person puts one sign up and says, okay, I'm a 7-Eleven, South Midcoff Highway, and you get off there and turns out 11 through 20 is all back in that residence, but that sign only says 7-Eleven. I mean, you would pass it up, thinking, okay, I'm going to the next sign, and you get to the next one and it's 725. Well, where did everything in between go? So then you have to spend some time doing some searching. It's come up a few times. So especially if you're sharing a multiple driveway, I mean, having that one at the end of the driveway, but then also at the house lets us know, okay, come this driveway. Oh, okay, here's 714, which was my original call. Where the complaint was called to.
I don't think that's an uncommon thing down south where you'll see almost like a cluster and then you drive up and then each individual one is up there. That makes sense to me.
Presently, I don't know of anyone in the borough that is specifically supplying these signs from the borough. The fire association does build these signs and put them up for the community. They recently increased their prices to, I think it's $25 for just the sign, and then $35 for the sign and the stake, of which they're still taking a loss on. But they're happy to do it because it helps them, help us, help them, So, but there probably needs to be some hard revision of that rule. So I know they were working on it. I don't know what the status is of it. I haven't checked in about it in like 6 months. But that's what I know, so.
Guess we could ask for the next meeting for somebody to come give us an update. And that, I guess is there a motion now? That was a motion to discuss, right?
Yeah.
So I
just
would
to
motion we
discuss.
have whoever the responsible municipal person is, come give us an update on the revised regulation.
To my current knowledge, that would be either Liz Cabrera or Molly Tiber.
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all of that. Communications, is there anything that we have under that?
I don't have any communications. May not have what I've sent, but under discussion items, I have something if,
Okay.
unless you guys have discussion.
I would
items
thought that
first.
was a communication, but
Okay, as we were talking about earlier, before the meeting started, federal OSHA is working on updating the fire brigade standard. To my knowledge, I think the last time they did anything with it was in the 70s. But as part of that, the regulations that are coming through, they're going to affect how the fire department operates, both fire, EMS, and search and rescue. Some of the changes are for good and they have good intentions. Some of it are going to be very cost prohibitive and will shut down the department if I don't get the money to do it. And they're not providing funding in order to enforce these changes. Some of them include full medical screenings for all volunteers, like a complete suite of workup yearly. Some of that can't be done here in Petersburg, so then now you're paying for flight and travel to make it happen. Because you have to send them where the equipment is, so that could be a Juneau or possibly Seattle or Anchorage, depending on what ends up being required. The comment period closed at the later end of July, but there is going to be a hearing on November 12th via Zoom, where they're discussing a lot of the public comments that they have received, the federal OSHA, and then there's also a comment period in there for just that hearing that you can sign up and get on a list to speak for a couple minutes. The State Fire Chiefs Association, the State Firefighters Association, the State Search and Rescue Association, and the Chief Code Enforcement Officer for the Alaska Office of Health and Safety, have all wrote letters in opposition to, these changes. Some of them are direct opposition to everything and all. Some of them are requesting exemptions for volunteer fire departments to keep costs down. It's kind of all over the board, but this is something that will affect us nationally. And many organizations across the United States have wrote in opposition to the change because it's unfunded mandate. And with the requirements, if you're not doing it, you'll get fined into oblivion for not following it. So I can send you guys the information on it because it is a lot, and if I were to pull it up on the screen right now and start talking about it, we'd be here all day. But can send you the information for review, and I would encourage if you guys have any interest in it. Hopefully you guys can meet before I'll get you the sign up deadline for that November 12th meeting if you guys wanted to speak, for example. And if you guys did want to speak or assign someone to speak or have a letter read for it, I'll get you all that information and where to contact that. So.
Would a letter better come from the assembly?
The assembly
Would
is
explain-
also drafting a letter.
Okay.
I actually received the draft letter from the borough's lobbyist today. There's some edits that I have to make to it to make it specific to things that are related to Petersburg. But the assembly is working on that as it'll be put before the assembly to sign. The administration, I should say, is working on it. So.
Just ask that our name be assigned or assigned to that letter too. Mhm.
I think that'd be fine.
Let's do that.
Good idea.
So I move that we endorse that letter.
Second. Even though we haven't seen it yet.
I will make sure that you guys see the draft copy before it's finalized and you guys can make changes.
Any other discussion items? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No. I'm not hearing very well. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Dr. Tasillo and I were talking before the meeting. Scooters.
I have, just to give you guys some background on the scooters. I did actually speak with the business owner involved, just inquiring a little bits and pieces about it.
They need a bell or a horn.
They come from the Napa, the owners of Napa, West Davis. It is a rental program which you use an app on your phone. You sign up, you pay for a certain amount of time, you get to drive the scooter around. It is supposed to be age 16 and up. By signing into that app, I mean, when you pay your signing agreement saying you're 16 or up, you can drive it around, and when time's up, then the scooter is meant just to be left there. There are 12 scooters in here in the borough. I know they also have them in Wrangell as well, but I think it's a different entity. You have someone that goes around and monitors the fleet. There is no docking station for these. Someone actually has to go and change the battery. You've noticed they've been being left on the sidewalks. That's kind of how they're designed to be used. They are going to be put away for the winter because they're already seeing a tapering off of use due to the inclement weather. So they're going to put them away and bring them out possibly sometime in April is what the business owner was thinking. It's just another popular way for getting around. I did plug to him the fire department along with the police department, and the Petersburg Medical Center Wellness Office is now starting a helmet safety program in town in which we are encouraging kids to wear helmets. And the fire department first, the association paid $2,000 to get quality multi-sport helmets for kids to wear. It'll be also appropriate for use on these scooters. And I can't remember off the top of my head which other agency put up money for it, but I think it was either WAVE or the hospital came up with some additional funding to encourage that program. If you'd like to hear more about it, you can talk to me after the fact. But they're trying to and all they're trying to do is just provide scooters that people can get around on. Currently, they have a business license and are doing everything they're supposed to be doing by mandate and by the company's own agreement policies. I haven't received any complaints or heard anything, any accidents related to them yet. But of course, knock on wood,
How about close calls?
I have experienced a personal close call, but it was an adult riding one of them who decided to turn out in traffic right in front of me as I was going in between the South Harbor parking lots on those S curves. And that unfortunately is a common sense thing, not a, I don't think any enforcement would have stopped that.
Well, I think they're annoying as heck, and that's as polite as I can get. I came downtown to get something to eat. And they were running, zipping back and forth. There was half a dozen of these kids on these things, and they were on the sidewalks and off the sidewalks, on the sidewalks, in across traffic, and they were traveling pell-mell, willy-nilly. I'm shocked that nobody got run over, including myself, because they were up on the sidewalks and they were just on you before you even knew that they were in the area. So
Other city, large cities, I'm gonna use Nashville as an example because I'm familiar with what they have done. Some municipalities have decided to create an ordinance related to it, in which instead of dropping them off anywhere, they have locations that they drop off on, regulations required to how they're driven, such as not being on the sidewalks, being only in, like, say, the bike lanes, as well as restrictions on age. So I mean, you could restrict it to adults, restrict it to, require proof of driver's license. Some of the companies that do it require that. My understanding is that the particular app that they are using here does not require the driver's license, proof of driver's license. There are things that can be done. I only asked because I knew it was coming up at some point, and so that's up to you guys to make that recommendation.
well, I'd like to
But
table that probably for another meeting, but I think it needs,
add something too.
Does Petersburg already have bicycle laws, right? Like riding on the sidewalks and there are, aren't there?
I admit that that would probably be a great question for our police chief.
I think that there are, and maybe it'd be a good idea if in April, before these get put back on the road, to put a ad in the paper reminding people what the laws are for Petersburg and do a good social media blast so that the kids can see it too. To remind, because I'm pretty sure that there's laws stating that you can't ride your bikes on the sidewalks, and I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
But if somebody could look that up, that'd be great. I just think that'd be a good idea for in April to.
And the business owner himself seemed willing to, if anything needed to happen, to be work with the borough. So,
day I saw it, there was a tour trip in town. There was tons of people on the sidewalks, and these guys were zipping on and off the sidewalk. So I think we need to address this at some point in the future before the next scooter season comes up.
Or maybe the laws need to be the scooters my guess is it would just say bicycles now, maybe electric bikes and electric scooters and stuff would need to be added to that law too.
electrically powered.
But this is a
vehicles.
situation similar to the boating situation we were just talking about, where it's about education. So this is one that we know we can tackle.
Yeah, no, this one I think is pretty easy, and I'm pretty sure there is on the books. Usually in most municipalities, you can't ride on the sidewalks with a bicycle, so it'd be a minor addition. And the police, I saw one of the officers, getting after the kids for riding on the sidewalk when I was down here, so. Okay.
So, that's all I know about it, but, I'm sure the police have a better ear to the ground on that one, so.
Pretty sure.
Can I move to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, we're done. Yeah, I came down, I was at El Zarape and I'm walking back and forth across the street and I